What's up YouTube? It's your boy Jermaine back with another video. And in this video I'm going to compare and contrast New York and San Francisco, because a lot of you guys know I just got back from New York and I also work in San Francisco, so let's just talk about the two of them together. Now, I have spent quite a bit of time in New York. I've been to New York more times now than I can remember. I've lived in New York for a short amount of time, and I'm somewhat familiar with New York. I'm very familiar with San Francisco. Now, let's compare and contrast San Francisco and New York. San Francisco is a whole lot smaller than New York. San Francisco has a population of around 800,000 people. New York, on the other hand, has a population of around 8 million people. So they're like very, very different. Like San Francisco would almost be a little neighborhood in New York, or a pretty big neighborhood in New York. Now, things I've noticed with the two. A lot of people think New York is the most expensive place in the country, and yes, there is a lot of truth to that. But I'm just gonna make a little compare and contrast here. So when I was in Greenwich Village, I was, walking through, and I saw a sign on a building that said, an apartment for sale, whole floor, and it was $7 million, all right? You would never see something like that in San Francisco. I'm sure those places exist, but there's not enough places in San Francisco to exist for them to put like a billboard that says that. In New York, I'm pretty sure in Greenwich Village, there are a lot of places that are going for $7 million. So yeah, that right there is a whole lot more than what you would see in San Francisco. But the norm in San Francisco is a one-bedroom apartment costing $3,000 or $3,500 or $4,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. That's the norm. Now, in New York, I'm sure in certain areas that's also the norm too. But the big difference between New York and San Francisco is there are way more buildings. There are more neighborhoods in New York. There's just more deals in New York. Now, New York on average still would probably cost more than San Francisco. But if I was just looking for a one-bedroom apartment and I went to New York and I went to San Francisco, I think I would find more deals in New York, and I think I would find better pricing in New York. Something else that we should look at, comparing the two cities. Well, in New York, a friend and I found a place in Harlem that was $1,000 a month for a studio in Harlem, which is a really good deal. Now, you probably would not find that in San Francisco. San Francisco, maybe you would find a room in a house for $1,000, but we literally found a studio in Manhattan, in the city, in Harlem, which was $1,000 a month, which was a really good deal if you ask me. Like, I almost wanted to rent that place. Now, I don't even live in New York. Like, I live here in the Bay. And the catch with that place was it was on the 5th floor, and that building did not have an elevator. So automatically, a lot of people would not want to rent that place because it doesn't have an elevator and it's on the 5th floor. But to some people, like someone like me, I totally wouldn't mind walking up 5 flights of stairs every day if I was paying $1,000 a month. Now let's say that place was on the 1st floor. Who knows? The same studio would probably be like $2,000 a month just because it's on the 1st floor and you don't have to walk up. But once again, there's more deals in New York. Let's talk about food. Food in New York, I thought was much cheaper. And the reason why I say food in New York was a little bit cheaper is because there is so much competition in New York. When you walk down the street, there's this guy selling hot dogs. There's this guy over here, he's got, halal food on his stand. There's someone over here selling bottled water. There's this other person selling bottled water. There's all these people around selling stuff. What are they competing for? They're all competing for the same people. So all the prices are typically lower. Like bottled water is like $1, like pretty much everywhere. Falafels, you can get falafels for $4 in New York, for $5 in New York. If you go to a restaurant, you can get like a really, really, really good falafel for like $7. In San Francisco, if I want to get a falafel, the cheapest I'm going to find a falafel for is $7. Now that's going to be a really good falafel, but on average, I would say falafels are about $8 to $9. In New York, I went to one place that had the best falafels ever. It was $7, tax included, everything. In the Bay, I would say one of my favorite falafel spots is Oasis Falafels. Their falafels are like $9. Now, don't get me wrong, they have really good falafels, but yeah, for $9. Also, Oasis, they have multiple locations in the city, but usually when I get food from Oasis, it's like I just buy the food and I leave. Like there's not even a place for me to sit down and eat. You know, in New York, you can get a falafel for $7 and you can actually sit down in the restaurant and eat, you know? And there's also a lot of other, there's so many other food stands. There's so many other mom and pop stores. Mom and pop stores, typically, they can sell food cheaper than a corporation because maybe that mom and pop store was in that location for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. So they're paying less money in rent versus a corporation like Starbucks or Chipotle. Now, I noticed that Starbucks and Chipotle in New York cost a whole lot more than Starbucks and Chipotle in the Bay. Going to a Starbucks here, I would get, you know, iced coffee with soy, and it would cost about $2.25. Well, that same iced coffee with soy, a grande, in New York would cost about $3.29 because the drink costs slightly more, and there is tax added to that. In the Bay, when you go to a Starbucks, they don't charge tax, so you save that, and the iced coffee is lower than the price that they were charging in New York. I don't exactly remember the pricing, but it was like literally $1 difference. Going to Chipotle, I noticed that maybe my burrito bowl was 50 cents higher than what I would pay in the Bay. So certain things were cheaper and certain things definitely cost more. Now, going to like a mom and pop store, like a Chinese restaurant, because I had a lot of Chinese food there, I've noticed across the board that if you go to Chinese places or if you go to mom and pop stores, you're going to pay a whole lot less. Like all the Chinese restaurants I went to, I mean, I didn't go to like a fancy Chinese restaurant, but I just went to, you know, a Chinese restaurant with a health inspection level of A. Because in New York, I only eat at restaurants with an A for the health score. So I would typically like find a Chinese food restaurant, see what their health score was. If I saw an A, I would eat there. If I saw a B, I would avoid that place. But I noticed that those places were typically cheap. I never paid no more than $7 for, you know, a vegan meal, Chinese fried rice with vegetables. And I usually got a bottle of water with that and French fries. And it would be less than $7 every time. Now, one thing I don't do in the Bay is I typically don't go to Chinese restaurants and order Chinese fried rice or French fries. Because I just feel in the Bay there's less of those mom and pop stores, and I don't know, I guess I just eat way more falafels when I'm in the Bay. But that's one thing I noticed, that food is definitely cheaper because there's way more options to choose from. And, you know, I'm definitely eating vegan meals. For someone who's non-vegan, you're gonna have way more options, way more things to choose from. Now let's talk about getting around the city. New York, I would have to say, was a lot cheaper transportation-wise. For example, in the Bay, I would wake up and let's say if I did not ride my bike in San Francisco, I would wake up and I would, you know, pay to ride the bus from my house to get to the BART station. And then I would have to pay to ride BART from West Oakland all the way to San Francisco. And then I would have to pay to get from, you know, the BART station to the Caltrain station. Okay, that would be another fee. And then I would have to pay to get from the Caltrain station to Redwood City. Let's just say I was going to Redwood City, which would be roughly a 2-hour commute. Well, in New York, if I was making a 2-hour commute, let's say I was going from, you know, the upper Bronx and I was going all the way to Coney Island, which is a pretty long distance in New York. I could do that whole journey with a weekly pass or with a monthly pass. Meaning that I would pay a whole lot less than what I would pay going that same distance in the Bay Area. Main reason why transportation in New York is a lot cheaper than transportation in the Bay is in New York, the subways, the buses, they're all like owned by the same company. So all the times work together. Like, it works together very good. You can just get a subway card or a bus card and just use it for all the buses in the subway. Unlike San Francisco, they're all separate companies. Like, there's the bus company in Oakland. It's completely different from BART. And then once you get to San Francisco has Muni, which is completely different from BART. The Caltrain is completely different from Muni, which is San Francisco's bus line. So to travel in the Bay, you would have to look at, this timetable and then this time chart and then see what time the BART comes. And then you'd have to look at all these different things. In New York, by all these companies being one company, it's easier for someone who's trying to get around. And it's also cheaper because you can use the same card for the bus and the train. So that's one thing about New York that I just have to throw out there. Like, you can find more deals. And also, like, I just feel that I spent way less money on transportation in New York. A weekly pass costs $31 a week. In 2 or 3 days around here in the Bay, I can easily spend $31 on transportation. Don't get me wrong, in San Francisco, you can get a monthly pass, but that monthly pass is only good for in the city. So you can't, like, use that monthly pass to commute, like, to Oakland and to San Francisco. That's really gonna vary by whatever stop that you get off at. So if someone lives in Richmond, California, and they commute all the way to San Francisco every day, that's gonna be like $11 or $12 per day of just getting to the city, not including the price of the bus once you get to the city. So transportation costs in the Bay Area can rack up really fast. And another thing about San Francisco, rent may be a whole lot higher, yet rent can be cheaper if you commute from a place like Richmond, but at the same time, you're just gonna pay more in time because it takes you quite a bit of time to travel from San Francisco to Richmond. And you're also gonna pay more in transportation costs because maybe you live 15 minutes in Richmond from the BART station, meaning that you would have to take an Uber every day to the BART station from your house, or you may have to take a bus in Richmond every day from your house to the station. And those costs are going to add up. Unlike New York, if you live farther out in Queens or farther out in Brooklyn, you can easily just use that same bus pass or the same train pass to get around. Like, you can use that in Queens and get all the way to the city, and then once you get to the city, you can still use it. So transportation costs would be much cheaper. So what's my favorite place to live in? Man, honestly, I like both places. Like, I love New York, I love San Francisco, I love the Bay Area. It's no secret why I love the Bay Area and San Francisco so much, because of the weather. I'm addicted to this, like, superstar weather out here. But I will have to say there is a lot more going on in New York. That city does not sleep. When I was there, I was walking, anywhere from 5 to 15 miles a day on average. I mean, my body was physically tired because every day I would wake up, it wasn't like I'm just sitting around chilling. It's like, yo, I'm ready to go out and do something. And every night, it was the same way. Like, I would go back home when I'm tired, like when I'm super tired. And around here, the Bay Area, like, the weather's awesome. It's just a laid back, like, lifestyle. Like, I don't run and I don't go as much as I do in New York. Like, in New York, I was literally awake, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning every single night. And then I would wake up at 6 and 7. When they say New York is the city that don't sleep, yeah, I definitely see a lot of truth to that, because when I was there, like, I was just going and going and going. Bay Area, on the other hand, as some of you guys know, California has a drinking law. No alcohol is sold after 2 a.m. So that means that the whole state pretty much dies down. Also in San Francisco, the trains close, like, at midnight up until like 5 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning. So if you want to go out and party all night in San Francisco and you live in Oakland or you live in the East Bay, you would have to sort of like, either take a Uber back home, or you would just have to plan your night around the train being closed. But if you lived in Brooklyn and you want to party in Manhattan all night, you wouldn't have to worry about the trains closing because the trains run all night long. And also there's multiple trains to take going from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Unlike San Francisco, there's only one train that you can take, you know, going from the East Bay to the city. You guys know I cannot forget about the weather, okay? The weather in the Bay in the summer is nothing like the weather in New York in the summer. New York in the summer gets crazy hot. I'm literally in New York burning up, okay? The thing about New York is as soon as the sun goes down, everything's still warm because the sun was out all day and the city is like full of concrete and steel. So the sun beams on that concrete and steel and heats everything up. So around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock when you're outside, if you walk up to a building and touch a building, the building's still warm because the sun's been beaming on it all day. And I was cycling around New York quite a bit, and I noticed that like when I pull up next to a bus, like I would feel like a big burst of like hot air hitting me in the face. And I'm like, whew, whew, like melting because all that heat's hitting you. And also like walking in New York, like certain streets you would come up on and there's these grates in the street and all this heat would come up. And it's like, whew, you know, that's just a New York thing. The cool thing about New York is it cools off in the winter. Now I haven't spent much time in the winter, so I can't tell you what that's like. I've usually always avoided New York in the winter, but for some reason I think I'm gonna start avoiding New York in the summer because this past trip, man, it was wicked hot, and I didn't even go to New York at the hottest time of the year, which is in August. But right now, I'm so happy I'm back in the Bay because it's, 65 degrees outside right now. Earlier this morning, it was like 55 degrees. That's why I'm wearing my, jacket here, and it's July. So I'm back in the Bay now. Glad to be back in the Bay. But like I say, New York is definitely poppin'. Just wanted to do a quick video, compare and contrast New York versus San Francisco. And thanks a lot for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Peace.